watching CNBC TV18.
In association with Binani Cement, Sadiyon ke liye. Raindrops Basmati Rice, pure rice from pure water. And F6 FinServe, start investing.
I reject the argument of policy paralysis. UPA 1 and UPA 2 have delivered above the trend growth rate.
In the UPA 2's last nudge, the Finance Minister P. Chidambaram attempts to marry fiscal consolidation with some tax sops aimed at manufacturing.
The fiscal deficit for 2013-14 will be contained at 4.6% of GDP, well below the red line that I had drawn last year.
The fiscal 14 fiscal deficit will be 4.6% lower than the red line of 4.8%, but the FM has rolled over the subsidy expenditure of 35,000 crore rupees to the next year. Next year's fiscal deficit has been pegged at 4.1%, but the FM has based that on an aggressive 20% growth in tax revenues and accounted for only a marginal increase in the subsidy bill. The Finance Minister throws a lifeline to the beleaguered auto industry, cutting excise duties on large and mid-segment cars, as well as on SUVs to 24% from 30% and on small cars from 12% to 8%, but the cuts apply for 3 months only. Auto companies say the move will be margin neutral. M&M shelves plans to redesign its portfolio after the excise relief announced today. Excise duties have also been cut for consumer non-durable goods, mobile handsets and capital goods. The interim budget estimates the gross government borrowing for fiscal 15 at 5.97 lakh crore rupees and net borrowing at 4.57 lakh crore rupees, which is lower than fiscal 14. Dalal Street ends the day on a firm note. The Nifty closes above 6,070. The Sensex is also higher. Mid-caps, which were languishing in red territory for the greater part of the session, managed to close positive as well. The Bank Nifty outperforms, led by private sector banks, but metals and realty stocks drag.
I want to make a categorical statement here that the government has no business to be in business. The business should be left to the private sector.
And the Aam Aadmi Party is not against business or capitalism, says Arvind Kejriwal. Says his party will push for privatization and fight crony capitalism, defends actions taken against the power discoms and Reliance Industries. Well, our top story, the continued coverage of the Finance Minister P. Chidambaram presenting the interim budget for the fiscal in the UPA2's final dash. The Finance Minister has tried to strike a balance of sorts between fiscal consolidation on one hand, along with some sops that's aimed at manufacturing growth. So in his speech, the FM said that FY14 fiscal deficit target will be 4.6%. That's the lower, in fact, than the red line of 4.8%. However, he also rolled over the subsidy expenditure of 35,000 crore rupees to the next year. And setting some ambitious goals for the next government, the FM has pegged next year's fiscal deficit at 4.1%. Chidambaram based that decline on an aggressive 20% growth in tax revenues and accounted for only a marginal increase in the subsidy bill. Let's listen in to the man himself.
The fiscal deficit for 2013-14 will be contained at 4.6% of GDP, well below the red line that I had drawn last year. More importantly, the current account deficit that threatened to exceed last year's CAD of $88 billion will be contained at $45 billion. And I'm happy to inform the House that we expect to add about $15 billion to the foreign exchange reserves by the end of the financial year. The current financial year will end on a satisfactory note with the fiscal deficit at 4.6%, below the red line of 4.8%, and the revenue deficit at 3.3%. Emboldened by the progress made, I have budgeted for receipts and expenditure in 2014-15 that will leave a fiscal deficit of 4.1%, which will be below the target set by the new fiscal consolidation path. Revenue deficit is estimated at 3%. The estimate of planned expenditure is 5,55,322 crore. Non-planned expenditure is estimated at rupees 12,07,892 crore. In 9 quarters, the GDP growth rate declined from 7.5% in Q1 of 2011-12 to 4.4% in Q1 of 2013-14. Thanks to the numerous measures that I have narrated, I was confident that the decline will be arrested and the growth cycle will turn in the second quarter. Madam, I believe I have been vindicated. Growth in Q2 of 2013-14 has been placed at 4.8%, and growth for the whole year has been estimated at 4.9%. This means that growth in Q3 and Q4 of 2013-14 will be at least 5.2%. I can confidently assert that the economy is more stable today than what it was 2 years ago.
All right, it was a noisy budget, all right, with the din in Parliament, but the Finance Minister going ahead and making the presentation. But the vote on account brought much needed relief to the struggling auto industry specifically. Now, the Finance Minister today basically announced a reduction in the excise duty for the sector. So the excise duty on small cars and motorcycles, that will be reduced to 8% from 12%. Duty on SUVs, that will come down to 24% from the earlier 30%. And duty on larger cars has also been slashed. So the excise duty on capital goods, that's been lowered from 12% to 10%. And although all these are temporary measures effective till June 2014, they are unlikely to be reversed, at least until the economy picks up and growth is back on track.
To stimulate growth in the capital goods and consumer non-durables, I propose to reduce the excise duty from 12% to 10% on all goods falling under Chapter 84 and Chapter 85 of the schedule to the Central Excise Tariff Act for the period up to 30/6/2014. The rates can be reviewed at the time of the regular budget. To give relief to the automobile industry, which is registering unprecedented negative growth, I propose to reduce excise duty as follows for the period up to 30/6/2014. Small cars, motorcycles, scooters and commercial vehicles from 12% to 8%. SUVs from 30% to 24%. Large and mid-segment cars from 27 or 24% to 24 or 20%.
All right, so those were the announcements meant for the auto industry, but well, obviously automakers supercharged and most auto stocks also took home some healthy gains post that announcement. In fact, Maruti, Tata Motors at their end have already said that they will pass on excise benefits to the consumers. In fact, with immediate effect, M&M reacted to the news saying that the excise cut will see a price reduction for its premium SUVs. The company though added that the reduction in duty will be margin neutral since the benefits will be passed on to consumers.
The consumers want high ground clearance, and we were forced to reduce ground clearance because of excise regulation. And therefore, from consumers' viewpoint, we would want to have a high ground clearance. So we might undo some of what we had done, though it will take some time because we have gone through a certification process and redesign, so it's not something we can change immediately, but it might get done. Overall, demand will go up. Differentially, whether a particular company will benefit more is hard to say right now. The differential that we had in our pricing because of excise duty has come down because 30% also going to 24%. That will help us. But whether that's big enough help for us to differentially improve is hard to say. But the industry overall will definitely improve.
All right, reactions from the auto industry over there. But what's the political fraternity making of FM P. Chidambaram's vote on account? Let's cut across live to Shireen now.
Well, thanks very much. You've heard captains of industry, you've heard the government, you've heard the economists, the market watchers, and it is now time for political reactions on Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's interim budget, the last budget presented by the UPA2. Joining us now, Panda of the Biju Janata Dal, also with us Piyush Goyal, Rajya Sabha member of the BJP, with us from Calcutta, Maua Moitra of the Trinamool Congress, and also from the Congress party, its spokesperson. Gentlemen, appreciate appreciate you joining us here, and Mahua, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Let me go straight to you, Piyush Goyal, because the Finance Minister says he's been able to deliver on the fiscal deficit number. In fact, he's bettered the fiscal deficit number. He's been able to bring down the current account deficit quite significantly. You cannot accuse him of throwing in any big bang populist schemes in this last budget. The only thing that you could say he's done as far as industry is concerned is bring down the rates of excise duty for select sectors, namely auto, to be particular. So in a sense, would you say that at least Chidambaram has left the economy in a much better shape than A, he inherited, and B, that you perhaps may inherit if the BJP were to come to power?
Well, we had inherited an equally bad economy in 1998, which with sheer prudence and fiscal consolidation and honesty of purpose, we left behind in a very good shape for Mr. Chidambaram. After 10 years, he is leaving behind equally bad economy, similar to what we had inherited in 98. And I'm surprised, Shireen, that an astute observer such as you has not been able to understand the numbers. After all, this so-called red line that he says he has not breached, he's not breached because he's not invested in the economy. He's not breached because he's cut down 91,000 crores, which should have been invested in creating capital assets in the country. He has not cut down any wasteful expenditure. What he has cut down is defense expenditure. What he has cut down is social sector spending. Subsidies still have gone up. So one will have to analyze, when you look at the budget, look at the fine print, what you find is for the last 4 years, this government has been giving us numbers which are found to be untrue, which are consistently being breached. They make certain projections of revenue which are consistently found wrong. They make projections of expenditure which they never meet. End of the day, what we are left with is a situation that the country is borrowing large sums of money only to meet its revenue expenditure. We are leaving behind a liability for future generations to repay without creating any assets for them to enjoy.
You know, I'm interrupting you. I'm interrupting you because, yes, we have quibbled about the quality of the fiscal map that's been put out by the government. Yes, we have quibbled about how this 4.6 has been arrived at and how the 4.1 will be arrived at for the next fiscal. But that apart, and I want to get you to be specific on this issue because I've asked you this question several times over. You keep blaming the UPA for doling out subsidies, and I want to ask you specifically about oil subsidies. Would the BJP continue with the process of diesel deregulation? Would the BJP continue with the process of LPG subsidies being the way that they currently are, being more aggressive as far as LPG subsidies are concerned? Because when you talk about this government playing the subsidy game, I want to ask you, what would the BJP do if you were to form government come June or July?
Shireen, I have said this on earlier occasions. When the NDA was in power, we allowed and we insisted that petrol and diesel prices should be deregulated. In fact, the prices went up as close to 26 or 27 times. They also reduced correspondingly when prices moved. We gave a regime where inflation rate was so low, we had brought it down to as low as 2 or 3, 4%, that this kind of moderate increase over a period of time is something which never affected overall inflation or the common man. This government for 9 years out of 10 did not touch the rail fares. For 9 years out of 10 did not change the petrol and diesel prices to move with the times. On the contrary, when the situation had come to hurt the common man, inflation was at double digit for over 5 years with relentless increases. At that time, when you try to further burden them with significant price increases, that is what we objected to. The government did not have a consistent 10-year roadmap or policy. And then when the situation got out of control, they were giving a double whammy to the people. I think what my government will do is strengthen the economy,
so you're saying that it wasn't
encourage investment, encourage people to get jobs.
You have a fair point there. But I want to interrupt you again. I want to interrupt you again, Piyush Goyal, because we do have limited time on this show. There were two issues that you specifically talked about. You talked about the fact that they did not hike railway fares for a decade, and finally when they did hike railway fares, the minister who hiked the fares had to lose his job. You talked about the fact that it was only in the recent past that they actually moved as far as diesel deregulation is concerned, and they couldn't move on that because of a coalition partner. And I'm not suggesting here for a moment that the problems of the UPA too have been only on account of their coalition partners. But Mahua Moitra of the TMC, there is some substance to the fact that a lot of the moves perhaps that the UPA would have liked to take to at least move to more market-determined pricing didn't happen because of opposition from the TMC.
No, I strongly refute that. I strongly refute that because when we signed up for the second UPA, for UPA 2, we very clearly said in our manifesto that we were against FDI in insurance, we were against FDI in multi-brand retail, and we said very clearly that we were against any kind of removal of subsidies that are going to affect the very poor, the bottom of the pyramid. So given that, I mean, when you're looking at this budget, we don't think any of what is in the budget today, any of the problems that the UPA are gifting to the next government are to do with anything to be blamed on the coalition. For example, you changed the subsidy regime, you removed the subsidy on liquefied petroleum gas, and the minute you realized this was affecting your voter base, you changed it. So you brought it down, you brought it to 6 cylinders, and then you decided to put it back to 9, and then when the vice president of the Congress decides that no, 12 is the right number, you bring it back to 12. So I don't think it has anything to do with coalition compulsion.
The TMC wouldn't even allow that to happen. The TMC wouldn't even allow 6 to happen. The TMC would never have allowed the 50 paise per litre hike in diesel.
Yes, of course.
So if the Congress party now wants to be politically opportunist, why would you argue with that?
Excuse me, do you believe? No. Do you believe that it is in the interests of the poor and the middle class in this country to have the subsidy removed on LPG down to 6 cylinders, which is completely unrealistic? Do you think a family of 4, which is the basic family size, can feed themselves 3 meals a day on 6 cylinders, that is 1 cylinder every 2 months, with no alternative source of fuel? You mean to tell me, do you believe that is realistic?
Let's leave the subsidy. Let's leave the LPG subsidy out of the way, Mahua. I want to ask you to comment. Yeah? I want to ask you to comment on what you made of the interim budget that was presented by Chidambaram this afternoon. Do you believe that at least in terms of delivering on some of the promises that he had made last year around, he has come good? We can quibble about the fiscal math, as Piyush Goyal has pointed out, and we've been pointing out to that as well through the day here on CNBC TV18. But beyond that, at least he's been able to deliver on some of the key numbers that he had said he would.
Okay, I think if there's one word that that sort of encapsulates this budget, it is gimmickry. That's about the only word. He's played with numbers and he's played with words. So I'm just going to look at just a few of the headline things of the budget. You're looking at, for example, this is a vote on account, so you're not supposed to touch direct taxes and actually not even indirect taxes. What does he do? He says, I'm going to reduce the excise duty on SUVs from 30% to 27%. If you look at the budget of 2013, this very man changed it to 30%. He upped it from 27% to 30% in 2013, and now he reduces it from 30% to 24%. And the excuse he gave in 2013 was, SUV is a big vehicle, and I quote, it requires more parking space. So have SUVs decided to use less parking space now? You kept the small segment of cars at 12%.
You make a valid point there.
Now to 8%.
You make a valid point there, Mahua. And I'm going to quote Piyush Goyal, who said, like the BJP changed its mind on retail, the government perhaps is entitled to change its mind as far as taxing SUVs are concerned. But you're making a valid point there, and I've been questioning the government about this as well.
Panda, let me come to you. It's a middle class political stop.
All right, Jay Panda, let me come to you. You know, at least there are no negatives in that sense in this budget. From a populist scheme giveaway point of view, would you at least agree to that? Would you be as generous at least to agree to that?
Let me first of all welcome the announcement in this budget of finally approving the one rank, one pay for retired defense personnel. This has been a demand for 9 years. And again, just like Mohua was pointing out for LPG, it happened within 2 days of the Congress Vice President mentioning support for it. So I wish she had mentioned support for it some years ago, would have happened earlier. But nevertheless, let me welcome that. I want to say something else also. Beyond that, for those of us who were inside the Lok Sabha, because of all the disturbances being created, mostly by government members, including many ministers, it was difficult for us to register what was being said in the budget. And I think that will be pretty much the fate of the budget outside the Lok Sabha also. Among the general public, I suspect it will mostly not register because it comes too late in the day and is going to have very little impact. So there's really very little point in discussing about its merits because, very shortly the people are going to give a verdict.
Panda, if I may ask you this, if he had actually made announcements, you would have been down his throat saying that propriety demands that he should have stuck to the convention, he should have stuck within the constraints of presenting an interim budget. At least he hasn't done that.
So I think what you are asking me to say is to agree that he has stuck to the convention. In that case, that's fine. I don't have any problem in saying that. But let's treat this for what it is. It is the last budget being presented by the UPA government after 10 years of fairly dismal performance. Now, the finance minister himself has rated the performance of his government rather well. He's entitled to do that. But you know and I know how the markets have rated the performance of this government over the years. And pretty much we know how the people are going to rate this. I think I will end this by saying the following. Mr. Chidambaram has presented many budgets over the years. I think his best by far was in 1996-97, which was described as the dream budget.
All right, and you believe he hasn't been able to replicate the success of the dream budget in the 10 years that he's been part of the UPA 1 and UPA 2. But let me bring in the Congress point of view. Balachandra Mungerkar joins us as well. You've heard Jay Panda's view, you've heard the TMC's view, and you've definitely heard the BJP's view. Piyush Goyal has made no bones about how the BJP is going to call this budget. Mr. Mungerkar, would you agree that as far as the UPA 2 is concerned, it's been too little, too late?
So I don't agree anything with what TMC and my friend Piyush Goyal has said. I congratulate Jay Panda at least for agreeing that one rank, one pension and the cylinders, etc. See, let us try to understand that budget, basically this is for 4 months budget, and taking into account the domestic and international constraints, though 4.8 and 4.9% of the 2 quarters and less than 5% during last 2 years, compared to UPS performance is unsatisfactory. Mr. Chidambaram has successfully shown the path that Indian economy will be recovering and it will be achieving 2014-15 about 6% rate of growth. Second point, in infrastructure has been taken very seriously, and during last 9 months, I think, if we take port capacity, railway capacity, national highways and rural roads, I think sufficiently has been done and more could have been done. Third point is social sector investment, if we take into account, that is also satisfactory. Fourth, so far inclusive growth is concerned, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, gender budgeting and children, they have been given largest possible allocation than any other interim budget. Fifth, taking into account international situation, world economy is reviving and today global rate of growth of the world economy is around 3.2%. China also rate has declined from 9.5% to 7.7%. Under these conditions, I think within domestic constraints and international constraints, Mr. Chidambaram has done commendable job. It will revive the process of growth. He has contained the fiscal deficit. Mr. Trinamool Congress was just now saying that these are numbers. See, economics budget is not that history or sociology or poetry. It has to do with the numbers. He has contained fiscal deficit. He has contained current account deficit for 88 billion, which was out of the way. Normal current account deficit should be not more than 2.5% of your GDP. It would have gone beyond 4.8%. Yeah. He contained from 88 billion to $45 billion. He has contained your fiscal deficit. He has contained revenue deficit. And I think that taking into account in economy, which is dynamic situation, We can't expect dream budget under every condition. Economics is a dynamic process, and I'm sure I agree with Mr. Chidambaram. I congratulate him, and he has shown the path of stimulating growth and making growth inclusive. That is what I want to say.
All right, Piyush Goyal, you can't expect a dream budget every time. And as Mr. Chidambaram said, this has been an approach in pragmatic budget making. I'm quoting what Mr. Chidambaram had to say. But I want to get you on a few specific issues, Piyush Goyal. You're talking about inheriting a lot of problems that you claim this government is leaving you with as far as the economy is concerned. And, one of the unfinished agendas for this government is that business of the retrospective tax amendment. And I want to ask you this because Parthasarathi Shom, the man who headed that committee who said that the retrospective tax amendment should be done away with, believes that the next government should actually take that forward. If you were to come to power, will you do away with the retrospective tax amendment? Yes or no?
Well, this government should have sorted out the mess that they are creating. They will have to address this issue. They had this opportunity. I wish they had addressed the issue. If once we come into power, we will have to look at the whole
You're saying they won't be there to address the
what
issue. You claim that
we may not land up making another retrospective amendment.
You have Mission 272. You're going to form government. What will you do?
We will look at the whole issue afresh. We will take the national interest and take a view how industry, business, investment and job creation can be kick-started. Within those parameters, whatever is the right decision, my government will take decisions. Unlike this government, we will not have a policy paralysis and we will have a leader because he takes decisions.
You're not giving me a specific answer, Piyush Goyal. You're not giving me a specific answer. You're giving me a runaround as far as the issue of retrospective tax amendment is concerned. My second question to you. Okay, my second question to you, and this was an issue that was raised by Arvind Kejriwal this afternoon as well, who was addressing the Confederation of Indian Industry, and that is the issue of gas prices, a controversial and contentious issue. Will the BJP review the decision as far as hiking the gas prices are concerned from $4.2 per MMBTU to $8 per MMBTU?
Well, I think the media has missed the detail that when the government increased the gas prices, the matter was studied by the Standing Committee of Finance, led by Mr. Yashwant Sinha of the BJP. We had called the Petroleum Ministry and the Finance Ministry. Their answers, responses, and justification was found to be inadequate and not convincing. And we have already referred the matter back to the government for a review of the decisions that they have taken. We believe the government has to act on it, and the government will have to take a more holistic view, again in national interest, how the consumer's interest is protected, how India does increase gas production, what is there in the agreements, because the government was not able to present a cogent case to us, and we will also have to see how we can reduce the imports of gas.
So if the BJP were to come to power, would you review that decision? If the BJP were to come to power, would you review the decision? Because Mr. Moily says the decision stands today.
That's already been said by the Standing Committee of Finance. The ball is already in the government's court. Whichever government, whichever party runs the government, and it looks pretty much evident that the people want to certainly throw out and put into the dustbin of history this current government. So when we get into government, we'll have to look at this whole issue in the wider national interest.
Okay. All right. Mahua Moitra, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in to respond to something that the Congress spokesperson has said, and that is, he says that, yes, it isn't, that the budget isn't poetry or sociology. I couldn't agree more, but I'd like to remind the Congress it isn't drama either. So if you're talking numbers, let's talk numbers. But numbers are nothing if they don't mean anything. And the Congress in this budget has just shown how numbers can hide everything. You're talking about the current account deficit being down from 88 billion to 45 billion. What is the current account deficit? The current account deficit can be reduced by either growing exports or reducing imports. It's one of the two, right? By your own admission, merchandising exports are down 1.8% year-on-year from last year. Your share of manufacturing in GDP is at its lowest, at 15%. Your target is 25%. You have no idea how to get there. Given that, the only way the current account deficit has come down is because manufacturing has all but stopped. There is no demand. In December, your oil imports were down 10%. Your non-oil imports were down 22%.
Gold imports, Mawa. Let's not be unfair here. Let's not be unfair here. Gold imports have come off sharply, almost a 70% drop as far as gold imports are concerned, and that is what has resulted in the current account deficit. So let's not be unfair. But I'm going to come back to you on that. I want to come to Mr. Baijayant for a quick response.
The minute you say manufacturing growth picks up, the minute manufacturing growth will pick up, then this import demand will go up, and you're going to see the current account deficit go back up.
All right, Mr. Baijayant, over to you.
First of all, what Mr. Piyush Goyal said, he was just beating around the bush. You asked specific question, gas prices from $4.2 to $8, whether you are giving this narrative and futuristic view, whether they will revise downwards. He did not give specific answer at all. The question is, if these prices are to be aligned with the international prices, domestic production unfortunately is not increasing. We should make all efforts. 70% about crude oil we are importing. Under this condition, their government started, the prices were to be realigned with the international prices. That's why I did not give the specific answer. The second important point is, as you rightly mentioned, one of the reasons for the reducing current account deficit is that the gold import have been reduced by nearly 65 to 70%, which was the major drain of your foreign exchange reserves.
Yeah.
Today, Piyush was saying that they inherited economy in 1998 in a very bad shape. In fact, today, our current, with all constraints and with all difficulties, today foreign exchange is enough to import around for 7 months period. I do not say that there are no problems of the economy, but within these problems of the economy, within what we called in economic theory as budget constraint, Mr. Chidambaram has done satisfactory job within the given condition. You could not have presented better interim budget than what it is. This is my argument.
All right.
Shireen.
All right, sir. Jay, very quickly, I'm going to come to you.
Shireen, there's a problem in what he just said.
Piyush, I'll come to you in just a second. Jay's been waiting his chance. You've had yours. I'll come back to you in just a second. Jay Panda, go ahead.
What's the question?
No, I was told that you wanted to come in on the point that Mr. Mungerkar was making.
No, I mean, well, if that's the question, no, I don't think this was the best that could have been done. I think better signals could have been sent out, but I agree that there's very, very little that one can do at the very end of a 10-year term for a temporary budget.
Okay, Jay, I want to ask you a question on the vision for the future as has been articulated by Mr. Chidambaram. This, in a sense, was the political part of this speech, and he's held out a 10-point agenda of what the UPA would like to take forward if it were to come back to power. Fiscal consolidation is the #1 priority, current account deficit, and in that context, he said that there should be no aversion to foreign direct investment. We should factor in a moderate level of inflation, draw a timetable for legislation, and I want to ask you that question as far as legislation is concerned. You're the third front, so in that sense you're distanced from the Congress as well as from Piyush Goyal, who's sitting right next to you. But I want to ask you, on the issue of legislation, do you believe that the BJP played an obstructionist opposition and stalled legislative action in Parliament? GST, DTC, insurance, so on and so forth, the list is long. But do you believe that we could perhaps have seen more legislative action take place had the BJP decided to play ball?
First of all, about the vision. Now, normally, governments ought to spell out their vision at the beginning of their term, not at the end of their term when all the opinion polls are saying that they will no longer be in government. So I think that's a little odd. It's like handing over the problems to the next set, particularly with accounting jugglery, which means that the new target of fiscal deficit is going to be very difficult to match. Now, you're asking me about whether the BJP has been obstructive. I think, yes, sometimes they have been opportunist in changing their views on the very policies which they supported. But I think that's not been the biggest problem. I think the single biggest problem has been that the top 3 or 4 leaders of this government and the ruling party have not spoken out in favor of the kind of vision that Mr. Chidambaram mentioned today. Neither have they gone out to promote their ideas and sell their policies to coalition partners and to opposition members or to the general public at large.
Okay, Piyush Goyal, if I look at the vision for the future, this could be your vision for the future as well, because pretty much a mirror of the sort of stuff that the BJP is also promising voters at this point in time, doing away with all taxes as far as manufacturing, so the taxes are not exported, choosing subsidies that are absolutely necessary, rebuilding cities, skills development, so on and so forth. This could pretty much be your vision. There's really no difference in that sense in the economic vision of the BJP and the Congress then, is there?
The difference is that we believe in action and not just offering people acts. The difference is that they give the country bills. We have the will to actually implement what we are saying. We have a track record of successful performance, whether in the center or in the states. They have a track record of fiscal profligacy. They are the ones who messed up the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which we had introduced. They are the ones, when the going was good, they frittered away the additional revenue that the government got. Rather than saving for the future, Dr. Mungekar, unfortunately, does not realize when he says that they have performed well on Forex front. They had inherited from us $113 billion of Forex and $111 billion of external debt. Today, they are leaving behind $390 billion of debt and only $278 billion of Forex reserves. So net from a positive situation, they have brought us down to $120 billion negative. Short-term debt, which was only $4 billion, is today $120 billion. Effectively, we are a more impoverished nation today than they had inherited. We are a nation with double-digit inflation consistently. We are a nation where there is jobless growth for several years, and they are taking satisfaction.
You've made that point. You've made that point, Piyush Goyal. I want to go across to Mr.
And not the best in the world.
Can I come in on this, please, Shireen?
Okay, there's some substance to the argument that you're making. Yes. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Bugli.
Shireen, I will ask Shireen, I will ask simple question. Right from 1952 to 2013 and 14, around 54 years of the power, BJP ruled only for 6 years. I will ask simple question. If BJP is so efficient, so growth-oriented, so prudent, why they were kicked and shunted out of power only after 6 years? I mean, they came down, I mean, they were just shunted out of political power. Their Shining India slogan at all did not work. And they are in political wilderness. They are talking about leader, they are depending upon only one leader. My only point is, BJP's track record of growth, inclusive growth, the subsidies, the policy, and most of that hypocrisy. Today, they were the first to initiate that the policy of all other oil prices, particularly food, fuel, fertilizer, and these are the three main items. Now they want one and to reduce the fiscal deficit, or the other end they want that common man should not be.
You make a point there,
This
Mr. Mungekar. Unfortunately, this battle between you and Piyush Goyal, by the way, both your parties have very similar economic agendas. This battle between the two of you can go on forever. But I want to wrap this up because I'm completely out of time. And Jai Panda, I want to start with 10 seconds to you. We all know that the UPA2 has been a disappointment on all parameters. But very quickly, would you be more charitable, at least as far as Mr. Chidambaram as Finance Minister, the 9th budget that he's presented, one short of the record of Morarji Desai?
Let me repeat, I think Mr. Chidambaram's finest budget was when he was a member of non-Congress, non-BJP-led government in 1996, which was described as the dream budget. Today, I think the best that can be said about this budget is that he has avoided making it a complete disaster as a final parting gift to the country.
Please.
All right. On that note, I am going to have to wrap this up, gentlemen. All right, Piyush Goyal, last word to you.
Please, Shireen. Shireen, last word, please.
Okay, Mahua, 5 seconds. You're going to have to split it. 5 seconds to Piyush Goyal, 5 seconds to Mahua.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm coming to you. Piyush Goyal, go ahead.
I think Mr. Chidambaram has acknowledged today the abject failure of his government. Both UPA 1 and 2 were disasters. We realized the disaster of UPA 1 a little late in UPA 2, and the people will give a fitting reply to the government. Howsoever much Mr. Mungekar may try and deride Vajpayee ji, he created jobs, he brought fiscal consolidation.
Well, if the UPA 1 was such a disaster, they wouldn't have been voted back to power, Piyush Goyal. But you had your 5 seconds. Okay, Mahua Moitra, the final 5 seconds to you.
Yeah. I just want to leave this with you. The estimate for black money abroad, illegal wealth stored abroad, is between 25 lakh crores, which the Congress says, and 40 lakh crores, which is the upper estimate. So when the black money abroad is 25 to 40 lakh crores, Mr. Chidambaram says today that 67 cases have been prosecuted, 17 cases have been prosecuted, and 67 cases have had investigations started. So you've got 25 lakh crores to 40 lakh crores, and only 67 cases have been investigated. That's what I want to leave you with.
All right, Mahua Moitra, Piyush Goyal, Mr. Mungekar and Jai Panda, thanks very much. We're completely out of time on this show. Thanks very much for joining us with your thoughts on the budget and the UPA and Mr. Chidambaram's legacy. History will judge the UPA and Mr. Chidambaram's budgets, various budgets, not just the last interim budget, for what they are. But thanks very much indeed for joining us here on CNBC TV18. On that note, it is time for us to take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Stay right there.